And you're listening to 91.3 FM, WCW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr. Chris Radio of Horror program. And tonight on Radio of Horror, we have the director of the Friday the 13th fan film, Never Hike Alone, on the show with us, Vincent DiSanti. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Vincent.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's good to be on.
We opened you up with some chit chit ha 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 kick kick here ma ma ma. As I didn't want to use any copywritten Paramount Friday the 13th music, which they don't seem to be using, considering they have no interest in making a Friday the 13th movie. But who knows what will happen in October when Halloween returns, and if Halloween will bring back the slasher film genre that it started, which is apparently something a lot of speculators in the movie industry are looking at to see happens. If Halloween does successful this October, we could see the return of the slasher film genre, which has been pretty much dead, no pun intended, since Scream 4 came out. Because I don't count the Saw films as slasher films.
No, definitely not. Those are definitely the more the torture style films, and hopefully, I mean, I think that horror's secular, so like we'll see it hopefully come back around.
I think I honestly cannot remember the last time a slasher film was in theaters other than we did get Texas Chainsaw 3D, but that's really stretching it to the imagination of like, okay, is that really a slasher film? Kinda it is, but that was in 2013. And then we've had like The Collector and The Collector 2. We had The Strangers, we had the sequel to The Strangers this year, which was but it's not. I don't consider The Strangers to be like the same type of slasher film as like Halloween or Friday. But you're doing your best to try and revitalize the slasher film genre with a much basically kind of dead property. The Friday the 13th films are kind of in limbo right now due to mommy and daddy not figuring out who owns custody rights to Jason. No pun intended. That's exactly what's happening if you're following any of the court battles. But you made this kind of amazing looking little independent 50-minute short film, which actually also brings back Thom Matheson as Tommy Jarvis, right around the same time that he's appeared in the Friday the 13th video game, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it all kind of worked out really well. I mean, with the timing of that, I'm a backer in the video game, so I was really excited to see Tom make his return into the game. I was excited when I heard about that. And then about halfway through filming, one of our executive producers, this guy, Barry J., was actually introduced to Tom through some mutual friends and had mentioned that, he was making Never Hike Alone, and I got introduced to Tom, and he ended up coming onto the film. So it was, like, amazing to bring him on and get it there because, like you said, it's been a while since we've seen a Friday the 13th film. It took a while, or, we had a lot of false starts and stops with the actual franchise and Paramount not knowing what they wanted to do with it. And, as a fan, I got kind of tired of waiting. And even though when I first started making Never Hike Alone, I anticipated that there was going to be a film released in 2017, and I was specifically making my fan film to kind of come out before it and not get in its way, just kind of be this small 10 to 15 minute love letter of saying, oh, this would be a cool scene or this would be a cool little concept. And it was about the time that they canceled the film and they made that announcement that we kind of all looked at each other on our team and said, hey, you know what? Like, Friday the 13th's wide open now, and there's a lot of disappointed fans out there. So we might have an opportunity to go in and cheer up a few Friday the 13th fans on Friday the 13th. So, we should really bear down and really, put a little bit of extra effort into this and make sure that, when Friday the 13th rolls around that, a few Friday the 13th fans have some smiles on their faces.
When you're making a fan film, do you have to run into a copyright problem with Paramount, who pisses and moans over everything, including they suing the shit out of a couple people making a Star Trek film because their Star Trek film was looking better than Discovery before we actually all saw Discovery, and then we realized, hey, actually, Discovery is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, each of the franchises kind of have their own kind of rules and tolerance for fan films. I know that a lot of Fox properties are really hard to make a fan film for. So if you try to make an Aliens or like a Critters or, something in that family, you're going to probably get sued right out of the bat.
You're talking about a Disney now owned film.
Oh yeah, true. I mean, this was even before Disney owned it. But there's a lot of Star Wars fan films that seem to get away with it. And Star Trek had its own thing. There was the Exacnar, or I can never pronounce it right. But I think the issue with them is they raised $1.1 million, and it started to venture into this, nebulous. Like, wait, where's this money going? How can it be tracked? How do we know it's all going into the film? And so basically, as you're going into if you're going to make a fan film, if you're somebody out there who wants to jump into the genre, basically you just kind of need to look up the rules. It's not that, they're out there trying to bash every fan film that comes out. I mean, a lot of companies, especially Friday the 13th, they're supportive of them. I mean, I believe the way that Sean Cunningham has treated them in the past is almost as like free marketing. If people are making Friday the 13th, or people are talking about Friday the 13th, it's just more interested parties to then go and watch the actual film. So throughout the process of Friday the 13th, we never had any issues. We actually heard from many alumni who were very supportive, and alumni who have seen the film, who have reached out and congratulated us on doing a great job, and so that meant a lot. I mean, there's a lot of support there. I think that the only thing that you got to keep in mind is when you do a fan film, you can't do it for anything other than the love of it. You can't get into it to make money. You're not gonna get into it to get anything out of it, but just a chance to maybe make that film that you would never ever get to make. That's what it was for me. I mean, I never thought I'd be able to work on a Friday the 13th film. And I thought that, this would be a great opportunity. Maybe I won't get this in my career, but this is my chance. So I'm going to go out and have fun with my friends. And we just, we went all in and we had a great time.
To back you up a minute about the Star Wars fan film, you can go on YouTube and watch an actual video with J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy, who is the current head of Lucasfilm, encouraging fans to make Star Wars fan films.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And actually, J.J. Abrams was the one who approached Paramount when they sued the Star Trek film and said, "Listen, like, you can't do this. Like, the fans love doing this. Don't take things away from the fans. Like, they're the reason why we're here. Let them go and have fun. This is why we do this. Everybody wants to participate, and that's kind of part of the spirit of it." So, I know a lot of people will go out there. I've seen a lot of comments on when we post things. They're like, "How are they not getting sued? How are they not sued?" I'm like, do you really want us to get sued? I mean, like, what's your problem? Like, we're all just having fun. And if Paramount doesn't care and Sean Cunningham doesn't care, then why should you?
Because Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, who are the mommy daddy having the court battle over Jason right now, does own, as far as this recording is going on April 29th, the legal rights to the character of Jason. So, and I have heard him plenty of times, be very encouraging of making, fan films sometimes. It's just always a matter of, like, that's the one guy, unfortunately not the studio, who the studio is always butthurt every 5 minutes, and you're like, but I'm glad to see that yours was not affected by that, and seems to be very successful and much beloved by fans. One thing I have to give it top notches to, more than anything else, is cinematography in your film is amazing. And with a lot of fan films, I see shit cinematography, and it just looks like garbage. And I see regular films that are not fan films look like garbage with their cinematography. But your cinematography rates right up there with, a regular independent movie.
Well, I mean, that was the approach. I mean, I've had about maybe a decade in the film industry working on various films, and I'm a cinephile and I love photography, and I worked with two really great directors of photography, Christopher Thellis and J.D. Martz, who both came in and had a really great approach. We knew what we wanted to do. We looked at films like 127 Hours and The Martian, and ultimately, production value will get you a long way, but when you can break down good films, I mean, good cinematography is good cinematography. You don't need to have, big special effects to do it. You just need to know which lens to choose, when to choose it, when to cut to it. And I think that was another big part of it, was the editing, which was done by partly my wife, Sarah, and another good friend of mine, Lawrence Gann. And it was, the combination of the two of, setting up really good camera work, that when it cuts, it's going to flow, and we're paying attention to all the rules of cinema. And I think that's maybe one thing that sometimes fan filmmakers don't really get. They get more excited about making a film about Jason, or making a film about Michael Myers, or making a film about whatever, whatever gets their going. And they don't go and then check in and be like, okay, there are rules to making film. There's a rule to the way you need to shoot a film. And if you follow those rules, you're going to put together a solid film. And I think one of the other things we get a lot of compliments on is like the drone photography. And I think that quite often you can find filmmakers who they go out and they just love the drone, and so they just fly the drone around, and they don't think like, you can't just fly the drone around. You can't just point it and fly. You actually have to, again, apply the rules of cinematography and use them in a very specific way and tell a story with each frame. And I think as a filmmaker, young filmmakers who are coming up who want to, improve their filmmaking skills from a cinematography standpoint, they should really study camera, and they should study films, and not just watch films for entertainment. Watch them about how, each shot sets up something specific, or each shot says something very specific. And once you learn how to kind of tell story with the lens, it becomes a lot of fun. And I think that that's where we found our strength, was that we kind of all had a strong sense of how to tell story with the lens. And, we had a beautiful set to work with. We had a beautiful, area to film in. So we just wanted to make, that camp seem as, creepy and old as possible, and the surrounding woods feel as big and scopy as possible. So, we knew the formula. We just had to enact it and, take those skills and apply them.
One complaint I have about your film.
Okay.
The only complaint I honestly can say I have about your film. It's called a Friday the 13th fan film. It has a slasher. It has the woods. It has somebody falling and tripping over themselves. But there's no nudity. There's no kids screwing around. No drugs and alcohol. No titty shots, booby shots. And by the way, we're going to be broadcasting this live, so we can't have any swearing. So we're going to make sure we use acronyms and stuff.
All right. Well, that's not true. We did sneak a little bit of nudity.
Oh, you have the Playboy.
Yeah, that was our way of doing it. I mean, we knew that we had the singular character, and we were going to departure. It was a big departure from the typical. The typical formula.
Not saying I would, because I'm a straight heterosexual male, but I'm sure the ladies wouldn't mind a little butt.
Yeah. Well, there was actually going to be a scene where we were going to. I mean, Andrew Lady, who's our lead actor, is actually well known as being a cover model for romance novels.
Oh,
yeah. If you want to look him up, he's out there, ladies, and you can see him in plenty of book covers with his shirt off. But we were going to have a scene where he gets to the lake and starts swimming around. But when we were approaching having a scene with him swimming, and actually, there's a scene later on in the film where we do get somebody in the water. I was told that in order to film something in California with a character in the water, I was going to need a lifeguard. I was going to need a scuba diver. I was going to need an on-site medic.
Oh my
and all
God.
These things just so I could have somebody swim around. So I was like, that might be a little bit too expensive just to have him take his shirt off.
That's when you cross state lines and just film it someplace else.
Yeah, no, and actually we ended up filming the scene that took place in the lake in Arizona to avoid all that stuff.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yes.
But your Playboy scene there. By the way, what for any of the aficionados out there who are collectors of Playboy magazine, what year was that magazine? What month?
It was July 1980. Because if I remember correctly, you usually got like the month before. Like if you got the subscription, it would come out like the month before. So that's the one that it's Steve Christie's magazine. It's the one he's kind of stuffing in his underneath everything else to keep hidden from the rest of the kids. Because I always got kind of a little bit of a creepy vibe from Steve, the way he's hitting on Alice, and he's got that mustache. I was like, yeah, this guy's stashing Playboy.
Oh, this is the one that had the interview with Bruce Jenner.
It is. It actually is. Yeah.
Yeah, the bane on many people's existences these days. Not to get political, just who was the centerfold in that issue? It was Terry Peterson.
Yes. Now I remember the name. Now I remember seeing Terry.
Oh my, she is absolutely gorgeous.
Oh yeah, she's very pretty. But we ended up. I think the breast shot we ended up using in the film was from a funny ad that was in there. It was like for sunscreen or something.
That scene kind of reminds me a little bit of in the remake, the the pot dealer that Jason kills before he gets his hockey mask in the remake is like
Yeah.
manhandling the mannequin. Yeah. So when
Well, if
our
oh,
hero
go ahead.
finds the Playboy, it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah. Well, the two characters that are in the two AMT characters that are in the ambulance at the end, they're both kind of calls. It's a callback to kind of part 4. One's named Morgan. Her name's Denny Morgan, my mom, and then Nurse Morgan from part 4, the one who kind of messes around with Axel. The other EMT's full name is Axel McCulley, which is a combination between Axel from part 4 and then I can't remember I think it's Bill, but it's the guy who shows up outside with Donna before he gets an axe to the back of the head, whose snow flurries up your nose. His last name in the film is McCulley, so we combined both those films and made the second AMT just a big perv.
Yeah, I was about to say, wait a minute, I thought Axel died. I thought that was the same guy for a minute there because, spoiler alert, Thom Matheson, the actor who played, is it Tom or Thom is pronounced?
It's actually Tom Matthews.
Okay, Tom Matthews, who who was the third actor to play Tommy Jarvis in Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives, is in your movie as Tommy Jarvis. And it's, I'm assuming, even though this is a fan film, this is supposed to be like the real Tommy Jarvis.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. We, when we met, I kind of said, listen, like when we do this cameo, you don't have to be Tommy. I don't expect you to come in and bring all that. Like just having you appeared, you can play another character. I won't force you to do that. And it was his idea. He was like, no, if you got Tommy, use him. So, we sat down and had long conversations about where Tommy would have gone as a character, about like what he's been dealing with. And, because we kind of had, it was pre-written that there was going to be a driver of the ambulance. It wasn't always supposed to be Tom. And when I said, well, listen, like, I think you could sub in here because there's this moment where, the driver interjects. And if like you interject and interrupt the scene and then fans see you, I just think that they're going to lose their minds. And so I was like, but I want to make sure that this role feels natural for you, or we could figure out another way to bring you in. But the more we talked about it, we were like, you know what? It makes sense for Tommy to become a first responder. He's been surrounded by tragedy his entire life. He's good in tragic situations or in harrowing situations. He's the guy that's going to be running into the burning building rather than running away from it. Technically, if you think about it, every death that happens after part 6 is all his fault. This is his way of kind of making up for it and also keeping his finger on the pulse of what's going on around Camp Crystal Lake. I mean, they're probably not going to let him be a cop with all of his psychological issues. And, a firefighter wouldn't have made sense in the thing. But, a driver of an EMT ambulance or being an EMT seems something that, where Tommy was in his life, he could have gotten into that and made a, decent living out of it. So it felt natural. And Tom agreed, and we just kind of built it off of that and went from there.
It was great seeing him back in the Friday the 13th video game as well. That was really cool.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. He was telling me about the process and doing the voice for it, and they were sending models back and forth, and he was kind of making comments about about the way he looked and being like, I don't know, like make me look more like this and like that. But I think they nailed it. I think he looks great, and like I said before, he even came into even decided to join the film. He's my favorite character, non Jason character from the franchise, and to have him in the game is like the guy who comes in and kind of kicks ass at the at the beckoning call was cool. And so it was, I'm excited to see him still participating in the franchise and still being a big part of it.
Do you want to make more fan films based off of popular characters, or do you want to kind of stay away from it for a while and do your own thing?
I've actually been pulled into a couple more fan films. I'm actually out in Idaho right now helping another filmmaker by the name of Jeremy Brown on a Friday the 13th fan film that he's calling Mythos. Jeremy was like, a lot of people reached out to me while I was making Never Hike Alone and said, listen, like I've wanted to make one, my entire life. And now seeing you do it, I'm kind of inspired to do it. So these people that have reached out, I've been like, hey, if you need any help, if you want any advice, if I've been through it. And I know how hard it can be, and I know the challenges that can be there. So let me come out and, I'll help you out and, help you create your vision. So we just have more Friday out there. I'm also helping out another good friend of mine who was an associate producer on Never Hike Alone. His name's Renee Rivas, and he's doing a Halloween fan film called The Spirit of Haddonfield. which he's a big Halloween fan. And again, like when we met and started talking through Never Hike Alone, he said the same thing. He was like, I've always just wanted to make one of these films, but I never thought I could. And I was like, no, it's like you can. Like all you have to do is just do it. And so it's been, I like doing it. I think that like, I have my full-time, I have my day job, I still work sets. I'm still pursuing, a career directing, doing original properties. But in the meantime, like, what better way to spend your weekend than going out and building a really good custom cosplay of your favorite character and, getting some of your friends together and getting creative with some of your favorite characters and telling fun stories that may not necessarily be the ones that would ever end up in the theater, but the ones that, fans talk about. It's the things that like people who are really, really into these characters who, what do? We go online and we debate in chat forums, or we debate on Facebook. And I think a lot of the things and these theories that we have about the characters, you'd never see a Blumhouse or a New Line or a Ghost House or any of these people who would scoop up these properties, go after these really, controversial or unique, like doing something like, oh, it's going to be Jason one-on-one versus somebody. If I had pitched that to New Line or Paramount, 3 or 4 years ago, they would have looked at me and laughed and said, there's no way that would work. So I think that what fan films do is offer fans a chance to say, listen, I think I got an interesting story that, wouldn't end up in the theater that fans might actually enjoy. So I definitely encourage it. Like, I like helping people out. I've become good friends with Dominic Smith, who did the Return to Elm Street, the 3 trailers for the Return to Elm Street. He did an unbelievable job. So I'm really big into fan films. I've actually got a new appreciation for them, and I think that you're going to see a ton more come out over the next probably 2 or 3 years because technology's catching up, and no longer are fans going out in their backyard with their dad's high 8 cam. They can go out there with a Red or a Sony AS7 II or A7S II or all these different cameras and shoot cinematic looking films.
2 fan films really skyrocketed the career of the guy who went on to direct the Power Ranger movie, which came out last year. Whether you liked it or hate it is debatable in the whole conversation. But he directed the Punisher Dirty Laundry movie with Thomas Jane and the Venom short film, Journalism or something. Dirty Journalism.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember the name of the Venom. I didn't like the Venom movie as much as I loved the Punisher film because Thomas Jane I thought was a great Punisher once upon a time.
Yeah, no, I actually really enjoy the Thomas Jane Punisher. I think he's an unbelievable actor. I'm a big fan of Thomas Jane. And yeah, I mean, I think ultimately whether it's a fan film or it's original property, I think the one thing that you can say for filmmakers is if you go out and you entertain people, well, then that's a skill. And it's a skill that can be marketed and applied to any, whether it's an original property or whether it's a franchise property that's looking for a new director to come in and give it a fresh take. No longer are fan films kind of like, oh, you work on a fan film that doesn't mean anything. As long as people are going to show up and watch it, especially in the age of YouTube where you can go out and get hundreds of thousands or millions of views for something, it shows that you have the ability to go out and tell a good story. And I think that that's all that counts. Yeah, I think that like back in the day, the equivalent of a fan film was writing the spec script. Look at, Predators came out, I don't know, however, like maybe 8 or, between 6 and 8 years ago. That was a spec script that Robert Rodriguez wrote when he was up and coming, just to say, hey, if I did a Predators, this is how I would do it. And 20 years later, after writing that script, they said, holy shit, 20 years later, they say, holy crap, we have a Predator script written by Robert Rodriguez. Let's go market this and make it. Obviously, I don't think it probably landed the way they wanted it to, but it's still, I think that it's fine to go out and, take something that is not necessarily quote unquote yours, but if you can show that, a unique way of telling a story with characters that exist, that just shows that you know what you're doing when it comes to story.
Tell us a little bit about some of the other actors in the movie besides the most famous of them all, of course, playing Tommy, who's I think obviously sometimes got a bigger presence than Jason sometimes, just because he's got lines and Jason is.
Yeah, no, Tom's great, but I mean our lead actor Andrew Lady, I met him Probably 5 or 6 years ago now. We were working on a film called Rock Dog together. It's an independent animated film for kids, and he was just a production assistant, working part time on the film, and we became really friendly. We bonded over a mutual love for horror films, and as I was putting together Never Hike Alone, he was an up and coming actor. He was doing the modeling gig. He was getting, little bit parts here and there, and he knew that I wanted to direct. And at the time I was working as a director's assistant, and I was kind of just mentoring under people and trying to find my first kind of project. And so we just been friends for a long time. And when we thought about somebody who could kind of handle this role, I was giving it to Andrew no matter what, but when we started going, it was one of those things where I recognized right away that this guy has acting chops and he's charming, and you want to follow him and you want to listen to what he wants to say, because I think the challenge when you're doing something that, involves a character just going one-on-one with a camera and having to carry a film on their own, you need someone, the likes of, like, say, a James Franco, a Matt Damon, who have to carry an entire dialogue by themselves for a majority of the film and keep, the audience engaged. And that's a lot to ask for an actor who, hasn't been in anything big before. And not to say that, like, Never Hike Alone is huge, but it's his vehicle. It's his vehicle to carry the film until, Jason comes along, which isn't until about, 18 or 20 minutes into the film where Jason really makes his presence known. He kind of pops up here and there, but without Andrew acting his butt off throughout the entire film, I don't think it would be as successful as it is today. And the other two actors that are in the film at the end, it's Katie Schwartz and another good friend of mine. Oh, why am I blanking on his name right now? I feel so bad. Oh, Robert Dubois. I wanted to call him something else, but Robert. Robert and Katie I met through a 48-hour film festival. Actually, Katie is a mutual friend of my wife and I, and she was putting together a 48-hour film project, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, and they were looking for a director, and they brought me on. And so she actually gave me my first chance to direct something outside of what I had been doing in my day-to-day life. And we worked on a film together called The Red Room, and both her and Robert were in it. And I had such a great experience working with him on that little film. We spent the weekend shooting it, cutting it, presenting it, and then doing it. And so, I can't thank her enough for giving me that opportunity, because it was the shot in the arm that said, listen, you can do this, and you can do these things outside of, you don't have to wait for, the professionals to come in and say, okay, kid, now you're ready. It was actually, you know what? I don't have to wait for anybody. I can go wrangle my friends, get some cameras, go out in the woods and shoot this on my own. So when I needed to, fill that ambulance up with people to, get slaughtered at the end of the film, I was like, I'm calling up Katie. Like, she's my EMT. Robert did a great job. He kind of has a small bit part in The Red Room, but I loved him. I thought he brought a really great energy. He's really funny. He's just a really great guy. And so it was, those two I've known for about the same time I've known Andrew as well. So, it was really just a bunch of friends coming in together and giving each other an opportunity to, showcase their skills.
And I've done my own 48-hour film, which is I've done two, and one 48-hour film was a complete and utter disaster. What's funny, though, because we're talking about Friday the 13th, the last 48-hour film project that I worked on, which was in 2016 here in Boston, I was just supposed to be the location scout manager, and I found him a location, and my job was done. I was just supposed to show up. It was actually going to be filmed at the radio station where we are recording now this episode of Radio Horror. And that night on Friday at 7:00, when the ballot, the different things are pulled, the person that's going to be in it and the object and yada yada yada, you know how the 48 works.
Yeah.
I was at a summer camp in the pouring rain on the big screen watching Friday the 13th Part 3 and 4 back to back outdoors.
Oh, that's great.
Next to a lake in the pouring rain, perfect. By the way.
Oh, no, that's great. That's definitely, that was maybe the one thing in Never Hike Alone I wish I could have had. I wish I could have had, like, a rain machine.
Yeah.
It was, like, the one element.
Expensive.
But, obviously we didn't have the budget for it. But I love Friday the 13th marathons. Those are, like, my favorite things. And, it's kind of like where we all go out, as Friday the 13th fans and congregate and talk about our favorite moments in the film. And, everybody there gets it. They're calling out, like, hey, Ted, where's the corkscrew? And, like, everything, that we love about these films. it's such a celebration of not only the franchise but the genre, and just our love for 80s horror. And like you were saying at the beginning of the interview, it's like it's about time that the slasher genre entered into its next phase. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be different, but hopefully Halloween does really well, and I think it will. I mean, just look at the frenzy of people that are like foaming at the mouth just for the trailer, who are making all these fake trailers and these fake posters and posting things about it. And the reaction that came out of CinemaCon about people who had seen the trailer and how excited they are. I think once people, or not to say people, but the investors, in these big, these big studios, that they're looking for the next big thing in horror. Like I said, the secular phase of the things that happen, there's zombies and there's ghost stories and there's slashers and there's torture, and it kind of goes in this circle where something becomes, and there's like exorcism films and possession films. So I think in the circular nature of the things that become popular and then go in and out, we're coming back along that phase about that stranger that could be in the dark and can get you in your home when you're least expecting it. That phase of horror is going to come back in, and that people are going to, that's what's going to gravitate towards. And we just need interesting and original stories. If we're going to bring back guys like Freddy and Jason and, Leatherface and Pinhead and things like that, like you were kind of saying before with Leatherface 3D, I think that, that was kind of like more of it was the independent route that went through. It was the limited release that it went through, but you're going to start seeing them go through now that more mainstream phase.
I think that was a Lionsgate movie, though.
Yeah, it was a Lionsgate movie, but I think it still went through. It didn't get look at the treatment that Halloween's getting right now. And even
huge.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre that came out in 2003 through Platinum Dunes, it got that professional release. And I think that the one that just came out, even before they had 3D, but they just did the other one, right? Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning or something like that.
No, what just came out last year was another film. It's actually not let me start over. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre doesn't even appear in the title. It's just called Leatherface, and it is.
That's right. Yeah.
You try to explain the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film library to somebody, so you go, okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so those films are all connected to each other in their own weird way. Mm-hmm. Or if you could, then you have the 2 remakes, the remake, and then you have the prequel to the remake. Then you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, which takes place after the first one, ignoring all the other films. Now you have Leatherface, which takes place before the first one.
Yeah. And the weird thing about the one that the 3D one that took place right after the first one is that like the timeline is all screwed up. Like his cousin or his aunt or whatever is like supposed to be only so, like, I can't remember how old, but it's like modern day. So it doesn't make any sense.
The Texas Chainsaw, it does retcon the timeline, because you have to ask the question, wait a minute. I understand women in Hollywood look like eternal youth supermodels, but this chick, there's no way in hell she looks like she's almost 50 years old by the time she was supposed to have been born back in the 70s, okay?
Yeah.
What the hell?
I think it's Alexandra D'Andrio or something like that. I can't pronounce her name.
That really bothered a lot of people. That it took them a little while to realize that they have retconned the entire timeline, because there is because that movie does take place modern day, because they all have cell phones in that movie, right?
Yeah.
And that is an example of the times. Everybody has an iPhone or a cell phone of some kind. What is kind of funny is in the Avengers, which came out this weekend, Tony Stark has a flip phone. Which is like, wait a minute, what is this taking place? He's using that old piece of technology?
He's got like the brick.
He's got a flip phone,
brick.
but he's contemplating calling Captain America for help. He opens up a flip phone, and everyone in the theater belted out laughing at that scene.
That's funny. Wait a second.
Major spoiler for the new Avenger movie. I revealed that Tony Stark does not use a modern-day iPhone.
That's funny.
Yes, leave your comments in the comment section below, and I'm going to completely ignore them.
Yeah, hopefully, I'm hopefully going to go see Avengers tonight and finally, hopefully, like, avoid any spoilers before it happens.
Now, people can order your film, right? Or they get they get a DVD pack or something like that. And do you donate all the money to charity so you don't make any money off of a film?
Well, yeah, the way we did it was it actually just finished on let me see, what month is it? We're
April.
approaching May. I always lose it, but April 15th was the end of it. We did an Indiegogo because we did, it's available for free on YouTube. Anybody can watch it. That's one of the rules of the fan films. Is you can't make it exclusive. You got to make it available for any and all who want to watch it.
Yep.
It was just that in the process of making it, we got so many requests for a physical media disc that we were like, I don't know how to do it. And
Physical
then doing
media
some
is still
research.
alive.
Yeah. So we ended up doing some research and figuring out that, wait, say that like you wanted to custom order your own one, like you were going to get the file and then send it in and have one made for you. It was like, well, we can do that for our fans. We can just facilitate that process, and we won't like make it exclusive, but we'll say, listen, like however many of you want to do it, we're basically allowed to raise upwards of $50,000 in order to do it. So we'll do that. We'll handle this for you, the facilitation. We'll do a one-time print, one time only, and you can do it. So the fans backed it. We ended up reaching $50,000. We've just started the process of doing the production of it. So, there's other things that came out, posters and things like that. So we've been kind of going through with each of our vendors and starting to get each of those balls rolling so we can get everything done. But, people who still want one, we got like an odd number of things. Like we're not going to order a specific number, like 16,081. Like we're going to round it off. So once we're done, fulfilling all the orders that were there, we're probably going to have a few left over. So we're going to let people know, like, hey, there's 40 Blu-rays left over. So if you want one, email us and we'll get it to you. But I would say, like, wait, follow us on like wompstompfilms.com and Instagram, Facebook, and all those things, and keep an eye out for us to make an announcement. We might have like a bonus few that are available. We're also doing some convention appearances. Like next week, we're going to be at Crypticon Seattle, in which we're showing the film. We're doing independent film workshop afterwards. But we're hoping to get a few more of those over the summer and into the fall towards Halloween season. So as we do those appearances and we screen the film, we're obviously going to bring a DVD, a Blu-ray or two with us so people can win it during the Q&A and things like that. We want people to have it. We just want people to enjoy it and have it on their shelves. It's for fans. It's not like we're going out and selling it on Amazon until the end of time to make profit. We're just doing it so it takes care of the production costs of what it takes to print the Blu-ray DVD, and then through the campaigns, both for like the production of the film and now the production of the Blu-ray, we've actually been raising money for good causes. Like the previous campaign was for the Penny Pines Reforestation Program, which helps revitalize sections of the forest that have either been burned down or succumbed to, diseases that like kill the trees. And this, this government agency goes out and helps replant trees and seedlings and things like that. And then Andrew is from Santa Barbara County. And if you may remember, over the winter, there were intense mudslides and fires that took the homes of a lot of people, and, a lot of people perished. So we wanted to give to the victim relief funds and things like that, and other, charitable causes that we think that are geared towards the environment, since our film takes place in nature and we spend a lot of time, shooting in the forest and things like that. We thought, why don't we make it relative, and, this will be our cause. This will be what we champion. And that's how we approached it, was let's spend what we need to get things done, and then whatever's left, we don't need that money. Like, let's go do something good with it. So it's another good way to kind of make sure that when you're doing a fan film, you're taking that goodwill of people backing you and trusting you to go make something, and then saying, listen, we're going to continue that goodwill. We're going to pass it on, and we're going to now take whatever's left over and do something good with it.
It's I'm glad to hear that you said people wanted a physical copy, because it shows that we don't want to watch everything on the internet. I mean, the internet is an absolute 100%, no doubt, no argument, and no denying resource for information at our fingertips when we need it on the go, and to reconnect with people that you might not be able to see every single day. But we don't want to watch everything online. We don't want to watch everything on our computer. We want to be able to pop it into a physical copy. There's a bunch of stores up here in New England called Bull Moose that have a huge reputation for selling physical media, and they've done very well with themselves. In fact, they moved a store into an old Gap or whatever. They're only in New Hampshire or Maine, but they do very well with physical media: CDs, vinyl, DVDs, Blu-ray, books, paperback, trade paperbacks of comics, things like that. So it's good to hear that your film, does have the audience to want a physical copy of it, because I would love to have a copy of it sitting right next to all 12 of the Friday the 13th films and the Friday the 13th video game. You know what I mean? It would look fantastic.
We can make sure you get one.
Oh,
Cool.
well, I really appreciate that.
I totally get it. I grew up in Massachusetts. I was a Newbury Comics kid. I was always there.
Look at you! You're a Massachusetts native. I did not know that. You and Adam Green, huh?
Yeah, I'm from Southern Mass. That's where I grew up. I grew up in a little town called Westport, right between Fall River and New Bedford.
I'm mostly from Worcester County, but the Radio Horror is recorded right here in Worcester.
I'm an alumni of Worcester State University.
Cool.
Now it's university. It used to be college. It was college when I went there, but now it's university. So I'm definitely using that one.
Who's playing Jason? And then you don't have a big soundtrack in your movie, but tell us a little bit about the song at the very end.
Yeah, so I'll jump into the Jason question. I'm actually Jason in the film.
Okay.
Yep, for about 60% of it. I mean, it was doing the fan film was based off of a cosplay that I was building at the time. But when we started getting into heavy stunts and I needed to be there behind the camera for more of the intense camera moves, I hired a stunt coordinator who brought on a gentleman by the name of Brian Forrest, who came in as my stunt double. And he does a great job, but we both share the role. He does a lot of the fighting stuff. I do a lot of the creeping stuff and a lot of the stuff on the trail and jumping out of the water and stuff like that. So it was good to jump back and forth with Brian in the role. And it was a lot of fun playing Jason. I mean, it's like a dream come true to not only direct the film, but then get into the costume and go, wrestle with Andrew for a little while and have some fun with that. And then the film's score was actually composed by a gentleman by the name of Ryan Perez Dapple. And there were two songs featured into it. One's kind of like this rock song that was actually written by me and my friends because we didn't want to use a Suicidal Tendencies song and pay a bunch of money. So we just wrote kind of like this punk song with a bunch of my friends, Jake Gonzalez and Lenny Machado, who owns a company called Elm Street Studios, which is based in New Bedford, Massachusetts. And the final song is written by a good friend of mine named Trevor Vaughn. And that one is called Another Soul, which can be found on his Finally Solalo mixtape, which is on what's the name of Mass Glory Records. So we're going to be, and part of the physical campaign we just did, we did release a soundtrack, and we will have a digital copy of the soundtrack available eventually.
Cool.
It's actually, I just got the first copy of it back and listened to it, so it's about to get ready to be released.
That's fantastic. You have a very unique kind of name. What's your background of origin?
Italian.
Yeah. So I don't know the lineage of all the actors who've played Jason before, but I've noticed they've all been, usually like American or Canadian. Do you think that Jason is definitely like a character because he wears a mask and we don't see his face, and obviously has a lot of makeup applications on, that we could cast like a black Jason, a Hispanic Jason, a Jewish Jason?
Totally. I mean, I think that Jason also is currently in a realm of so undead that, I mean, skin color really doesn't matter. I mean, he's got no more live skin, so it's all dark and decomposed anyway. I mean, I would love to see somebody, anybody could step in, anybody who's passionate and knows how to bring that physicality to the role, especially professional stunt actors, anyone who could step in and just bring that intimidation factor and make people cringe in their seats and, grip their loved ones tight and be like, oh no, like Jason's coming. Anybody who can step behind that mask and wear it well deserves to be in the role.
It would be definitely somebody who has to be hulking. So maybe any former, what Hollywood should do if they ever make another Jason movie, start looking into retired or injured former NFL players.
True. Or you could probably go after some wrestlers too. I mean, people who know how to physically act. Jason requires a lot of physical action and emoting with the body.
Correct.
Because you obviously aren't showing much of your face. But, I think that, football players or even like I said, like wrestlers have that ability. They know how to pose themselves. They know how to, do that. So I think you might actually get a decent performance out of a wrestler. It wouldn't be bad to see like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson underneath, the mask. I'm sure he could bring something to it. I always thought that Jason Momoa would also make a really good Jason. And little known fact, one A-list Hollywood actor that's dream role would be to play Jason is Hugh Jackman. If you,
Yeah,
I know, I don't know if
but...
I don't know how he would do, but I'm just saying, like, it's kind of funny to see. Like, I bet if you went out there and you floated out there to some actors or some people, like, hey, the role of Jason is open, you'd get some pretty interesting casting calls from people who you might not think would even give that type of role the time of day.
True. Yeah, it's just, Hugh Jackman, I think, has just too big of a pay to cast him.
Yeah.
As Jason.
Well, no, I think what he said was that he would take like the minimum just to do it. He wants to play Jason Voorhees that bad.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, look it up. I was really surprised to read that. I was like, good for you. I was like, that's actually really cool to hear that. I mean, and that's just another thing. It's like, that's how far the Friday the 13th fandom spans. It doesn't matter if you're Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, and your minimum is like $10 million just to show up on set and sneeze. It's like they're willing to cast all that aside just to don that hockey mask, and I think that's how iconic and important the role of Jason Voorhees is.
Wow, that'd be something else. I mean, God, that rates right up there with Tarantino saying that he'd like to write a Star Trek movie. And what is happening right now? Tarantino is writing a Star Trek movie.
That's what they should do. They should let him do it. I mean, it's going to be cool to see that. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see his style out there for a Star Trek film. I think that's what some of these films need. They just need, sometimes you'll get the Rob Zombie versions of things, and then you might get a mixed review. But, I think that those just, nothing's ever going to kill anything. We can always bring something back. We can always make another one. It's not that. It's just as long as you keep making them, that's what's important.
Absolutely. Why don't you give out a website people can find you at, find the film, and contribute to the Go-Go, or find you on Twitter or any of your other social media?
Yep, you can find us Womp Stomp Films, WOMPSTOMPFILMS. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. You can go to www.wompstompfilms.com. We have links to all of our social media sites. And go, check in with our YouTube page, link, subscribe, and watch Never Hike Alone. We just crossed 150,000 views just yesterday. So we want to keep that number going up, and we want to show, New Line Cinema, who's going to be receiving the rights soon, that, fans know what we want, and they should give us a call when they're ready to make a new film. And, we have a really good story. Fans of Never Hike Alone should know that, Tom Matthews and Andrew Lady have agreed to come back and do Never Hike Alone 2 if we're ever given the opportunity. We're waiting for the rights. We're waiting for Mommy and Daddy to stop fighting so they can figure out what they want to do next. And when they're done, we're ready to go in and pitch them what we think could be the 13th Friday the 13th that will blow all the fans away.
Fantastic. Thank you once again for coming on the show with us, talking about Never Hike Alone, a Friday the 13th fan film.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.